Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it looks like I'm live. Excellent. Let me get to where I can see the comments. Sorry, I'm a little bit flustered at the moment, running a little bit late. Usually have all this set up ahead of time, so I apologize. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Melco's application team, and this is our DesignShop Talk. We get together once a week to answer any questions you might have, pretty much whatever you want to talk about. Right now, I've got a list of questions. If you have them, please type them in under the comments on the actual post. Don't message it to Melco. I can't see those. Good morning, Margaret. So I did get one comment that I need to speak louder, so I'm trying to do that. Hopefully that works out. The software says my levels are okay, so just let me know. All right, well, welcome. Glad to see you guys here today. So just as a reminder, if I keep on looking off to the side, it's because I can only see 4 comments at a time, so I don't want to ever miss a question by accident. I do try to go back after the feed to add any questions to next week's that I might have missed while, bouncing back and forth. But let's go ahead and get going. So I had a handful of questions that came in. One of them is actually pretty interesting. I created my own font in Alphabet Editor. It's a script, but I can't get the kerning right. How do I do that? I tried moving the letter around, but I can't make it overlap. So one of the easy ways to figure that one out, now I'll say up front, I don't know the correct term for this, and I didn't get a chance to call the guys because I was a little flabbergasted this morning. So I don't know the correct term, so I'm going to say thingy, and I apologize. But here, I'll show you something. So if you go look at any of these script fonts, okay, that are already digitized in the Alphabet Editor, and then let's pick one of the lowercase because those are the ones. What is driving that kerning? Good morning. I'm glad to see you live today. So what's driving the kerning is this thingy. So that's where the next letter will start. So dragging this letter over as far closer to the origin isn't really affecting your kerning as much as this. So you can drag it around and move it, and that will affect your font. So keep that in mind. So that's what you'd actually need to move to adjust your font to work however you want it to. Okay, so you need to go into all your little letters and move it over about where you want the overlap to start. And there is, especially when you're working with scripts, there are some nuances on there to make sure they line up right. So it's easiest to figure that all out if you do it separate and then bring them into Alphabet Editor. But you can just trial and error it by moving that thing around. Okay, so there's that. Let's see, what other questions did we have? All right, so that addresses the kerning of how you can make the adjustment within your actual font. That way when you type it out, it'll work. I know there was a question about designing something. I think what I'll do for that one is I didn't get a chance to pull a design, so I'll check with the guys and see if they want me to do that next Friday or if we want to just plan on doing that midweek at some point, just to get a design and talk through it. One of the things that you did put here that I will go ahead and go through is thickness of an outline versus a running stitch. Running stitch and your satin stitches do give you quite a different look. In general, one is more rounded and shiny, if you will, versus your running stitches, which are more buried and kind of sketch-like. So it's choosing which one versus the other. Good morning. Really is a personal preference of what is the look you're trying to go for. Okay, you did ask. One of the things I always look at is one, style, right? So if you're going for a sketchy type look, it's going to look a lot nicer or more like that kind of hand-drawn if you're going to do a bunch of running stitches. Key to it is going over it multiple times and making sure all the needle penetrations aren't in the same spot. Reason being, one piece of thread is real thin and it's not going to show up very nicely. Real quick, there was a question on where is the Alphabet Editor. It's right here. Tools, Alphabet Editor. Okay. So while I'm here, let's look at the fill. So you mentioned Urban Threads and how they have that more watercolor / open fill type look. How do you get that? Well, it's just a matter of playing with your settings on your fills, right? So I've got this, which There's nothing special. It's just a box filled in, right? So if I want to turn that into kind of more of a open type look that I can overlap with various things, it's just playing with our density. So notice if I change it to 30, one of the other things you'll need to do is turn off your underlay if you're going to do it this way. Okay, and do your underlays manually or in a different manner. But what you'll see is now I've got that look. So whatever you're going for shape-wise, you know, you can kind of tailor it to overlap appropriately. You can even take these things and instead of having a straight stitch direction like this, so that's what this one is. It's just a straight stitch direction going here, back and forth. So instead of that, if I delete that one, I clicked the wrong stupid button. That was fun. Sorry. All right, so let's do this again. So I'll draw a shape. Now, and why don't we take, actually, let's go up here. I'll do an actual fill rather than the auto shapes. So whatever shape you want, you would draw it. Hit enter to close it. We have no holes. I'm going to hit enter to bypass the holes. I'm going to give it a start by a left click, stop with another left click. Now I'm going to hold this down and go to the insert curve direction line. So there I can, you know, do whatever shape I want for the stitch direction line, and you'll see it kind of makes the stitches run along there. Well, when it's a solid fill like this, it's not as noticeable, but if I come into the properties of it and change that to something more open, now you can really see kind of that wave effect to it. All right, so you can get a very different look just by playing with your stitch directions, by your densities. You know, these edges where those where it's going from one row to the next, you can also change those to be trapunto, which is this option box right here under properties, and that will clean up the edges so that they're more straight, so it'll run every stitch to the end. Okay, so that's one way you can do those. Now keep in mind when you're playing with your fills, there's also all kinds of fun things you can do with them. So this was just one way you can do that open, but what if you want a pattern in there, right? So you don't just want straight stitches running along a stitch direction. Well, if you go again into the properties of your fill, down here you can change it to decorative. And under decorative you can pick, you know, whichever one you want. Let's do one that comes with the software. And it'll fill it in with whatever shape you have. All right, so that's, you can create your own decoratives. Good morning, Edith. What would I do to put a border stitch on this? Okay, we'll do that next. So you can create kind of an open look all through here, adding whatever shape you want through this decorative. You can do stitches back and forth just with a standard fill, and then playing with your stitch directions. It's a lot of fun. So how would you add a border to this was one of the questions that was typed in. So what you would do is a few different ways I'll show you. One is select your shape. Okay. Once you have your shape selected, over here, hey Juliet, there's a change element from one type to another. Okay. It's this little box. If you click on that one, now I can say, all right, the shape I have selected, I want to change it to a single line center. Now I don't want to get rid of my fill, which would be replace. So if I say replace, it's going to get rid of whatever I have, and it's going to put whatever my new thing is that I'm telling it to do, it's going to replace it. I don't want to replace, I want to add. So I'm going to say add, and voila, we have a border in that shape. Okay. Same with, another way we could do that is if I select again whatever shape it is you want to add a border to, and add a border, or add as shift, replace as control. So if I select the shape, hold the shift key down, and then click on single line input. So shift and click that adds the border. If I move that, let's say I want to take this and just turn, I don't want to fill anymore, I just want a border. Well, I can hit control and single line, and now it gets rid of that fill and converts it over into just a straight single line. Okay. Let's see. There are a lot of designs, they're using a fill, so we talked about that. Determining the thickness of an outline or a satin stitch using a... So I tend to look at the size, how wide it is, and then the style. So do both of those. If you're looking for that more sketched look, you're going to want to use a lot more of your running stitches. If you're under, I don't know, 15 to 13 points, somewhere in there is usually my personal limit, I'll switch over to running stitches. So if you're trying to do a border that's 13 points wide, well, you can do it just, you know, a regular needle is what, 7 or 8 points about. So moving that small back and forth is not necessarily the best idea, right? So it'd be better off using a running stitch. All right, what other questions? I have a free version of the software. I've never upgraded. I run all, okay. So this is, how do I use fonts that I bought elsewhere to auto align them? So I know I saw some of the advice on there was to use the BX formats, which are not a DesignShop feature, but that is one way that I've used. For DesignShop, it really depends on how that font was created, the font that you're trying to use. And why I say that, let's see, if I go insert and my designs, things I've bought, fonts. Okay, so pick a font. Let's say I want to do large. I guess I'd rather trying to spell something, I could just pick letters, but let's spell Sam. All right, so bringing in one letter at a time. I want the lowercase. Move that guy over somewhere. And then let's insert an M. Nope, the lowercase m. There we go. All right, so I have 3 here. Let's zoom out a little bit, move that over. So these are all 3 separate expanded things. So what you could do is select this here, and then once you select all of them at once, right here you'll see I've got space evenly, space vertically. So if I space evenly right here, it kind of spaces them out. Now it did not do my top to bottom yet, but I can tell them to line all to the bottom right here. And if I decide, hey, those are too close to one another, well, again, I can move one, the first one and the last one over. So then again, select everything and say space evenly. And now it's spaced out more, right? That's a little silly though. So let's just do it like that. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Now, the problem with that is these are all single expandeds, right? What I mean by that, it's not a whole bunch of expanded things under one. There was another font that I pulled up earlier, and of course I didn't write down which one it was, so let's see if I get lucky. Maybe that? I really don't know which one. Let's see. Nope, not that. So if really where I'm going with that is if it's made with a bunch of different pieces, what you're going to find is the item itself. Let's see if that one works. Yeah, look, this one has 2 expandeds, right? So if I try to take this, and let's say I want to spell sim instead for whatever reason, okay? So now if I do that, if I select everything and say space evenly, look what it does to the 2 separate items, okay? It got rid of this. Grouping it doesn't fix that either. So you can use that auto space as long as it's single expandeds, okay? If it's separate like this, it's going to separate them all. So then you'll have a bunch of pieces in different places. More work than you really want. Okay. Although what you could do is this and then just move the I dot over so at least the bulk of it's done. All right. So that's a way you can do that. The other is, you know, get the free software and use the, I don't even know if they do it free anymore, and use the BX files and just save it off as a DST and then open it in DesignShop and you're done. All right, so that's the auto align. Let's see, I'm embroidering on a quilt square with a whole bunch of names for somebody. What's the easiest way to import text in DesignShop from a document? Copy and paste. So if I don't have a document, let's see. So I'm just going to type names. Whatever, we have multiple names, right? So if I copy those, and then I come over here when I'm creating the file, I can just paste and see if it decides to work. And I broke my computer this week. Can I explain the expanded again? Yeah. All right, so if I open that up, come over here, paste them all. These weird characters sometimes come in, depending on the font you were using in the other software. But I can apply them all and just copy and paste them straight in. Okay. So with what I was trying to say with the expanded importing of things, let's see if I find a better example of that. Insert. Let's go find a different. It's one of the ones down here. That one probably does it. Oh. Trying to find one that has multiple pieces built into it, because what ends up happening is the letter itself, even though it sews continuously, it's broken up into multiple pieces. So when you have that, as you try to maybe should have found one beforehand. No, see, that's a single expanded, which means all of this is one element. They're not separated. Whereas that I or another font, if you brought it in and it had this piece of the M as one element over in this tree, and then maybe this line as a different element in the tree and not just one grouping, then it's going to treat each one of those expanded things as a separate file. All right. So, or a separate element for that spacing the different objects. So with an I, that's easy to imagine. I've got the line and then a dot. So they're two separate things because there's a trim between the dot and the lower part. So that's easy to see. It's when you've got larger letters that sometimes you'll end up with it being separate expandeds, depending on how, whatever the digitizer used for their software when they saved it off, how it created it. Now keep in mind your expanded files, they are what, you can kind of see it as I move it. So you see all those dots, all of those are needle penetrations. Okay, so that is actually where all the different stitches are going to go. I can turn it onto this toggle expanded points, and if I turn it off of 3D and zoom in, you'll see, no, you cannot group them. I tried that. That's the first thing I looked at, was grouping them. It still treats them as separate elements. Okay, so what you'll see here is these are all kind of where it's going to be programmed to actually do its stitching. So that's what an expanded file is. It has no math behind it. It's just wireframe. There's no wireframe data. It's just needle penetrations and color change info. Just fun fact, down here on the stitches tab, you can actually see all the stitches. So you can click on one and it'll actually highlight on here where that particular stitch is and go there. Okay, so that's that stitch right there. That's where I am. You can see the little cursor moving around as I click. So that'll actually show you exact stitch number that it's on. 4,897 is right there. Okay, and then these are just the coordinates of how the machine is going to move. All right. Let's see, what else do we have? So copy and paste, get your names in. I would recommend not using weird fonts. It's actually better to use like just a really basic font. That way your apostrophes don't have to be replaced and typed in the software. Notepad's a good way to do that. Type them into Notepad. That way it's really basic text and it'll copy and paste over well. This one was a question messaged in. It was, is there a way to digitize half a column and then allow it to mirror to get copy the rest for you? So that's when you're doing like unique shapes, right? So if I'm going to come over and do a column 1 or 2, I guess it doesn't matter. What the question is, rather than going from one side to the other and digitizing, like if I'm trying to make a symmetric shape, the question is there a way to make these points mirror? So if I click here around a center point, have that one appear at the correct spot and duplicate on the other side. Not currently. The only way I know to do that is to trace a shape. Okay, so did send that over to the team to add to the feature list, so there's that. All right, any other questions that you guys can think of? Because that is all the ones that were typed in. I think someone actually did type in a another question, and I don't remember what it was. It was after I logged off. I'm trying to find it, sorry. Not there. I don't know. All right, any other questions? I don't see any. All right, well, I will, for question on digitizing, I'll get with the team and see if they just want me to digitize something at the start of one of these or during one of the Q&As, or if we want to set that up as another kind of start to finish type, just pick a design and do it and just talk through it. Find some artwork for that and we'll get that scheduled or planned out. Anything else before I log off for the day? What's the best video tutorial for making patches? Oh my goodness, there are so many. It really depends on how do you want to make them. There are so many different ways to do them, whether you're going to do it like an applique. So here, I'll show you some resources. Let me go to melco-service.com. Let me pull it over onto the screen so you can actually see it. All right, under this FAQ, I'm going to type in patch. How do you do group names? Okay, so custom patches. So there's a bunch of different things. Down here, there's a nice document that was put together that shows the different steps using a vinyl and treating it kind of like a two-process thing. You sew out your design, you cut it out, and then you do the border application as a separate operation. There are several videos. Okay, so someone put in the link for us. All right, so you have a link to it. If you're doing, you can use synthetic materials as another way. So let's say you're using all polyesters or something synthetic that melts. You can actually sew straight out and then use a hot knife and cut it out and it seals it. So that's another pretty popular way to do it. I personally do them all as kind of an applique. So I put the fabric down, sew a circle, and I think I actually did a video on that in the past. It's probably one of these linked. Does it show how to do multiple patches in one, patches in one hooping? Again, it's how do you want to do them, as appliques or as just synthetic and go? If it's as applique, you got to be a little bit careful about doing a whole bunch at once because borders start to shift. So it's always better to finish as you go. So you just do one, complete it, move over, do another, complete it, and so on. There's a pretty neat technique that I saw on a YouTube. It's a really old video. I'll have to find it again for y'all. But actually, in the For the Love of Melco embroidery group, I think there's a file in there for patches. I put the link on that file I created probably a few years ago. So that's where I'm going to go find it. But the technique basically is you start a patch in one hoop, right? So I start it, and then you take it off, reset the whole design, put another hoop on, and run it. So then while you're trimming the fabric around this one, you're running the next one. When it gets to that same spot where it's time to trim it, you swap hoops and keep going. So it makes the process of going through and kind of doing a production run super efficient. So I'll find that video for you. Like I said, it is in the For the Love of Melco embroidery group. Under the files where there's, I think it's called patches, and I put a bunch of resources, so it's there. I'll go find the link and post it for you though, because I found that personally as a really efficient technique to do a whole bunch of patches quick without risking the registration issue that can happen if you try to do 20 patches in one hooping. Okay, now if you are going to do them all on synthetic materials and burn them out, just hoop it and finish, do one then the next, lay them all out, sew them in one hooping. When you unhoop, now you just go burn them all out of the fabric and you're done. Okay, what other questions? Nothing? Oh, group names. So there's been quite a few videos on that. We'll try to get the links posted for you there. But group names are pretty straightforward. You go into your text element, type in a name, get that straightened out with whatever font, you know, anything you want specific to that, which underlays, get it all set up nice and pretty. Then you come over here to group names and turn them on. You can add multiple names, import it from a CSV, whatever you want. So down here, there's an import. So let's say I'm going to add multiple names. All right. So what you would do is put all the names that you want into this list and move it to the other side. So if I want group names to show all 3 of these, I would select them all, and then right here, move them over into selected names. Down here, it's kind of how do you want the file to create itself. All right, so the design, then a name, and then go back to the beginning. And so a new design, a name, new design, name. Or do you just want to show the design once? That's another option. So then I'll show the design and a bunch of names right on top of each other. Or names only, separate files. I'll save them off as separate files. I usually do design, name, repeat. So what will happen is it only shows here, but if you save it off or send it to your machine, it'll actually show all the names that you put in that group name stacked on top of one another. So you would program it as color and then applique or hold, whichever it is. So you'd sew the first one, pop it out, put a new one in. It'd sew the second one, pop it out, put it in. It'd sew the third, and it would just keep cycling through the names until it was done. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any typed in. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful for you. Sorry, I started off a little flustered, but, oh, you're welcome. All right, so I will look for that video on how to kind of batch patches for you, so I'll post that in a little bit. Any other questions, feel free to type them in, send them over to applications@melco.com, and we'll try to get them on the list to get them answered for you. Happy sewing. I know our state's getting ready to do a limited opening, so yay for that. But have fun, and I will talk to you guys next time.